So in this video, I'm going to be talking about a project that I set up in Unreal Engine 5 where we're using the power of Lumen to be able to do a 3-point lighting setup, but then from there we also have real-time global illumination happening, and that all happens in the engine by default as you start up. But you can see some of the power of this is that if we've got this color sitting here, you can see some of this green color bleeding over and through here. And if we've got an object like what you see here, this red, the light from this is going to bounce off of this and then pull onto this white surface here. So I've made a couple different material types within here. I made a parent material, and then that parent material is able to be changed and change the different parameters on these. And so you can see this is this white material that I created for it, and we've got what I'm calling basic material properties, so just a roughness value of 0.3, and then I've got the ability to control an inner, like an outer and inner color like that, and then the ability to also say what is the fall off of something like that. But I was just using that as like a gray, a darker gray color and through there like that. So these materials get the ability to change that. The other thing I'll show you that was set up on here, it is a pretty simple lighting setup. So if I scroll out, I've got a rectangle light, and if you go here in the area, you can see rectangle light. This is where this is pulled in from, but I changed the intensity of that. Could have the light type set to movable on there. The intensity is set to 2.25 on there. You could change that value if you want for that, but again, this is my main shadow casting light that I have within the scene. Control of attenuation radius, so you can make that light fall off quicker if you like this, right? Then we've got also the barn door angle that we've got for this light, so you have the ability to control that, and then you also have the length of the barn doors that you could play around with. And then you can see that this light is actually being illuminated as if there's some atmosphere in here. So I did put, if we go here under exponential height fog, and then if I go here, I usually put a folder in here called lighting and atmosphere. So in here I've got exponential height fog, and I set the density is pretty low. If we drag this up higher, something like this, you can see we can really blow out the scene, and you can see how dense that is. So I'll just put this at something like 0.5, somewhere in there. That's still pretty high for that. So depending on what you want to do with that value, you can drive it up or down. I can tap G to turn off the icons so you can see what's happening with that. So I haven't really played around with this, but a lot of times I'll put this fog height fall off to 2, and then maybe drive this up a bit more. Maybe put the location down to like -500 or so, or maybe even further. Let's do -1000, like that, and that produces a much wider gradient, I think, for the height fog on there. So if I want, then after I got that set, again, you would have to readjust the values on something like that. But you could put it at the default if you want to get it back to whatever the default is for this. You could hit these refresh buttons that are on here, and the default value for that is pretty low, so 0.05, something right there and there. So you could make the lighting a whole lot more dramatic if you want. Now let's talk about what would be used for bounce light. So because we have global illumination on, you are getting bounce light for free in here. But if you wanted to up that a bit, you could use this skylight that I put in here. And so if you go back to the lighting area, you can go to skylight. And what I do have in this scene, I took the HDRI files that exist in Substance Painter and then grabbed those, took them into Photoshop, and then converted them over to HDRI files. They were EXRs, and so then now that they are EXRs, then you can take them and you can drag them into this area for the skylight, and you could get different lighting setups from that alone. So we could turn off the visibility of, I've got this point light and rectangle light. Now my skylight is not very bright within here. So if I put this at something like 1, you can see what we're starting to get for this. Now these do sit outside of what I considered this infinity wall. So I might have to just check these real quick and make sure that I don't have cast shadows on. So if I do shadow, cast shadows is turned off on this, so I believe we should be getting lighting information from the skylight. Now I do have an emissive material on here. I've made a couple different materials like I was talking about, so I could just fill this with this material right now. And then now everything that should be being lit from this scene should be coming from the skylight itself. And so again, if I crank the intensity scale, let's do something like 4 or 5, something like that. And if we take these HDRI files and we drag a new one in, we should get a completely different lighting scenario and a different lighting setup for this. So I'm just going to check this from outside and see what this looks like, and then through here. And so that could give us some additional bounce light that we have within through here for these. So you can see they've got some exterior shots, they've got some interior lighting scenarios as well. And they also have studio lighting that you could throw in here. So I'll put this back at maybe 0.1, maybe 0.25. Let's see that and get some bounce going on from that. Now this does seem to be affecting this translucent material that I made quite a bit for that. And depending on our angle, you can see how we're going to be more lit or allowing more light in through this. So I'll turn back on the rectangle light that we've got, and we've got the visibility of the skylight, and then we'll turn on what I considered this point light. So I used a point light on here, and I'm trying to make this into the rim light. So it's back here, and if we take a look at channels like this, I've got this set to channel 2, so this only will affect other objects that have channel 2 listed on here. And so because I disabled channel 0 and put this on channel 2, this light's only going to affect objects that have channel 2 enabled. So what I did was I didn't want it to affect the infinity walls, so you see that this is by default set to channel 2, and if I got this one up top here too, that's set to, or sorry, channel 0, those are by default set to channel 0. And so if I select these other objects, I wanted them to be affected by channel 0, but then also this channel 2. So these objects that I'm selecting here are the only objects that have this channel 2 enabled like this. Now if I took them and turned this default channel 0 off, you can see now that the only object that should be affecting that is that actual, what we consider the rim light or that point light. So here it is with everything turned back on. I'll go ahead and hit escape for that. And then so with this setup, we should be able to control quite a bit. And so put a cool light back here for this. You could change the hue of that and put this and make this into a warmer tone like this. Now I did take for this point light, should be set to movable. I don't think it really matters with Lumen if this is stationary or movable. It doesn't seem to have too much of an effect on the real-time display. But if I do have this and I turn off cast shadows on there, there is a slight difference to this, and you can see this highlight within this area changes just a little bit. So if you wanted to maybe make it a little bit cheaper, then potentially turn off this cast shadow, but it doesn't really seem to have that much of an effect on there. So again, if I went in through here and made it like a warm color, and if I even crank this up even more, I can start to get a much stronger rim. Now I did notice that it is affecting the world in here, and I believe that's mainly because of the exponential height fog, and then that, we've got volumetric fog on here, and so that does make a change to things. It changes the shape of that quite a bit. I'm not the biggest fan of what's going on with the infinity wall, so it is possible I could take that. I could scale this up even larger, so I could lock all these together and make this 2. And then I could take the top one and do the same thing. Set this to movable. Set this to 2 as well. And what I was doing with this is, if I just raise this up and through here, let's see, something like within through there. I did want to make sure that those actually lined up as far as the placement of them. So somewhere in through here, somewhere around there, I think that would work. But you can see the look that this produces on here, so I might maybe choose a different material that is more matte looking on here. So depending on what you're going to change with these, the values that you have on here, you're going to get a much different look. I could take this point light and maybe tone that down, or the rectangle light, tone that down a bit. And again, if I wanted to change some of the color information about this, then I could drag in something from here and do that into the skylight, like so. Okay, so this should give you enough to play around with to be able to change some of this. I do have 2 emissive lights in here as well, so you can play around with those, and you can change the color and the temperature of some of that this way as well. And do have a translucent material, and what that might look like on some of these different objects that you see, like this. Okay, so it does this material does have some refraction on it, things like that. But as far as I know, at the time of the making of this video, I'm not sure if translucency and like a glass material is fully working the way that you would expect within Lumen. So not quite sure about the look of that currently right now. So I'm just throwing some different materials on here just to see what things might look like. And through here, like this. Okay, and I'm going to put this emissive material on here, like that. So hopefully that should give you a little bit to play around with and produce a pretty interesting look. And then from there, if I just hit F11 to go into full screen mode, and if you hit Shift F11, if you have your Windows taskbar down below, you can hide the taskbar. And then from there, we could click right in this area and say high resolution screenshot, and then pull this up. And then if I want to make something that's twice the size of the resolution of this, I can go ahead and click the take a screenshot. And when it finishes up, depending on what this number is, it could take quite a bit longer, but you should see after it finishes up, it should show you down here in the bottom right hand corner a little pop-up to say that it took the screenshot and the screenshot is finished. And maybe because I'm in this full screen mode, that didn't pop up. So I can hit Windows E key, and if we go to where the Unreal project is stored on here, you should be able to go to this saved and then go to screenshots, and then you should be able to find that screenshot of what was made on there. Okay, so from there I was using that as an image that I was going to go into Photoshop and then try to recreate this with a digital painting and painting So instead of doing real world lights and finding objects, I thought this might be an interesting way of being able to use the power and the leverage of the Unreal Engine 5 and using some of the new techniques with Lumen Engine and use that to do lighting studies.